So I'm talking about the collection and beyond, or at least that's the title anyway. I once, as you've just been told in fact, once worked at the Powerhouse Museum, the Museum of Applied Arts and Sciences in Sydney, and the question that we curators used to ask ourselves at that fabulous institution was, what isn't collected here? Because they collect everything, you name it, there's one of them in the museum. For a while I thought maybe they don't collect art, but in fact, of course they do if it gives some sort of insight into social history. So practically everything is collected. But the National Portrait Gallery is a very different story. There it's, well for a start you already know, it's portraits only. So immensely restricted by that for a start, but beyond that there's other considerations. There's the title, in case you've forgotten it. And here's a picture of a Queensland person, just to make you feel like I know something about the local area. It's Neville Bonner by Campbell Shooting. The collection policy at the Portrait Gallery, what does it stipulate? I should just tell you rather than read, shouldn't I? But I've got a bit of headache, so I'm going to read. Namely that the subject should be Australian, that they should make a significant contribution to Australian culture, and there should be a pretty nice portrait is also there. So it's not the way you would read things in an art gallery. So there I would have started off with, this is a fabulous portrait by Robert Campbell Jr. It happens to be Neville Bonner, but in fact, it's the other way around. Here, the fact that it's by Reynolds is, by the by, it's Sir Joseph Banks. That's the main thing here. Beauty of Bounty, Claudia Carbon. So, does the artist count much? Yeah, a little bit, but it's the subject that counts most. You just have to know that. Florence Broadhurst, Queen of Textiles, is on the screen at the moment. Inventor of bionic ear. I'll come to this. So, what do you bring into the collection? The policy is extremely restrictive. You have to be Australian, as I mentioned before. You have to be make a significant contribution. What I'm suggesting is that the sitter is all important, and that the portraiture side is less important. So, for example, if someone came up to me and said, "I've got the Mona Lisa here, you can have it for $300," I'd have to say, no thank you. She hasn't made much of a contribution to Australian culture that I can think of, charming as she is. So, it doesn't matter, is what I'm suggesting. On the other hand, there's other things you can do when you go beyond the collection, which I guess is the point of what I'm here to tell you about. If you go beyond the collection, you can do other things. So rather than simply talk about that history, Australian history, and couple it with portraiture, you can take another perspective. If you're not collecting, in other words, the temporary exhibition schedule can do other things. You can then reflect on portraiture. You can legitimately include the Mona Lisa if you wanted to. You can talk about portraits, non-portraits, you can talk about identity. There's a host of things that you can do. I think Reveries was shown here not too long ago. So those of you who saw that will see what I think of as a non-portrait show. It was a show of photography and mortality, and there were a number of photographs in that had dust in the air that happened to be somebody's ashes. Therefore, it's a portrait. So you can extend things a long way. So portraiture is important, and you can do things with that. You can step outside the policy for a while, and in fact, that's exactly what I'm doing with my current project. I'm working on an exhibition of Francis Bacon and Lucian Freud, and I'm showing you these because I wanted to respond to the idea of Gothic here, which I propose to. So it's about portraiture, it's about significant ways of seeing portraiture and yourselves through portraiture and reflecting on that. But I'm not here to talk about Bacon and Freud, I'm here to talk about one of the exhibitions that we did called Animated, which started off in a very, very public servant kind of way. Those of you that work in the public service know that what you do half the time is send little messages to other people. Here's a picture of my baby, and look at my cat, it's very, very cute. And in this case, what I did was send a little film that I really liked to a number of select friends, and it was Paul Robinson's Pirate Babies Battle Cabana Fight 2006, which is kind of nice if you like that kind of thing. So I sent it, this is a still from it by the way, it's actually about 10 minutes long. So I sent it to a few select people who thought I was incredibly childish, and as you can see, probably that's the case. But one person didn't, and that was Jill Raymond, who was the online manager, who thought, this is pretty cool. I thought it was pretty cool, so we started talking to each other and thought, well, what can we do that we think is cool? And we came up with the idea of, well, we really like animations, we should do something with that. We don't have any money, and we don't have a space and a schedule, we're going to just chat away over coffee, or we're going to do something, so we decided that we would go for what we call the Animated Self, an exhibition of animated self-portraits. It doesn't go in any gallery space. It was designed from the start to go online. This is another Queensland Connections link text to put in. I was going to show you, it's a still, I was going to show you the movies, but that would take too much time. It seemed like a nice option to actually just sit back and let these things crank over. But I thought I'd do a little bit of talking to justify being put up here. All of these are available on the website, of course, so you can see the completed film by Arlene if you want to. And they're actually very, very nice, I have to say. Ian Haig, another they're all self-portraits, by the way, for the reason that we thought that was very easy for people to do. You've got the resource, you don't have to pay models. Perennially interesting to yourself, all of those things. I have to say that there is a connection with the collection, and that is when I started out with this project with Jill. The first two people I approached were Adam Elliott and Bruce Petty. These are the only two Australian animators that have received an Oscar for their efforts, so I thought this is pretty good. I'll approach them and we'll end up with something really cool that we can use in the collection. Because what were we actually offering? Not a lot. We were offering immortal fame on a website. How long is immortal fame on a website? I'm not sure how long. Not very long, I suspect. We were offering the OZCO artist fee, a little bit more than that. As you probably know, some of you know, it ain't much. What else were we offering? A note on the CV. That's pretty important. Very valuable. So we weren't really offering much, but we got a lot of enthusiasm. We got a lot of enthusiasm from Bruce Petty and Adam Elliott, Oscar-winning Australians, but we didn't actually get animations from them because they were too busy. If you were famous, you're doing an awful lot of things, and you can't always spare time. So a lot of the people we approached who were professional animators weren't able to contribute because they had lives, they had jobs. Which is not to say that the people who did contribute didn't. But if you look at the demography, they're actually a lot younger. So they're the emerging set. So it seemed like a nice way of framing things to go for that group. So Ian Haig is interesting. He was someone who I had in fact included on in the comics exhibition in 1990, a long time ago. Tony Thorne, who's also in this group, was someone who'd done comics as well. This is Deep Child, who's more of a musician, but these are fabulous flash animations using the silhouette. I'm just showing you a couple of these to give you an idea of the variety in these animations, which I think are gorgeous. So we go from the weird, wacky to more traditional things, ending up with Anita Johnson, which is quite a lovely work because I'm then jumping to something else. We had this on the web, and I was asked to comment, to tell you about the impact this had, the relationship to the collection. I'm saying it's a fairly tenuous connection with the collection. There was a starting point, but in the end it became an independent entity. What was the result? I think we got a few more hits on the website, and that's pretty nice, but again, it's a fairly intangible kind of thing in itself. Did we build up goodwill? I think we did, but again, try telling back to the finance department, goodwill stocks up. That's nice. Basically, we have only anecdotal evidence that this was a good and great thing to do, but that's not what it was about. It was actually about profile building. We were trying to do a number of things. The holy grail of galleries, museums, all sorts of cultural institutions is youth. So we thought we were kind of moving in that direction. The question, for everyone working in the cultural industry is, how do you lure youth away from the internet and into the gallery itself? Well, we didn't even try. We thought they're there already, let's go for them where they already are. And that seemed like a nice thing to do. So they didn't have to leave home, they didn't have to leave the computer to go and see our show. The other thing is the portrait gallery is actually closed. So it seemed like a nice thing to have a show on while the gallery is closed. So we're actually open on the internet, but physically we're closed. The other notion here was, it seemed to me and to Jill that there's too much of a fixation on exhibitions as such. So okay, I'm doing back and forth, it's pretty nice, it's going to be a great show, but let's dispense with all that negotiation about loans, the kind of things about space, costs, schedules. You can do other things, is all I'm suggesting here. Of course, we already know about the other things you can do. There is the podcast, the lecture, the catalogue, all sorts of approaches that you can take. A teacher's trail. I won't name them all, you know them all already. Simply that some are more effective than others in doing certain things. So it's really the golden rule is horses for courses. So you can see why we took this approach with animated self-portraits. I should tell you that we're working on something else. This is Jill on her own. She's moving into Second Life. This is actually Jill lolling about in Second Life, and so are these. These aren't the artworks itself, but the exhibition Doppelganger is, as you guess, referring to alter egos, to other identities, and we're engaging a number of artists to create self-portraits of a sort in Second Life. The difference is that we've worked pretty nicely with the animated self with no money whatsoever, and now there's actually a budget for Doppelganger, which is terrific with commas as well. I won't tell you more about it other than that one artist who's in it. To give you an example is Andrew Burrell, who's an exciting Australian artist. But that idea of animating portraits is one that already existed in the portrait gallery, it's fair to say. So I'm just showing you a little bit of the website because I'm desperate for pictures. And this one is the portrait features. There's a bunch of portraits on the website. You can click them and they do a few things. To give you an example, here's Nicholas Anything. You click on it, you see the Paul Borstead animation of the hose, a rare sighting camera these days with the drought, by the way. Clicking over to the nips are getting bigger, and the posters by Paul Borstead zip on. Each of these is quite different, so that they're really very, very charming things to look at. But they're not art, they're simply advertisements for the art. The curator's fantasy, while I'm up here indulging myself, is, mine always was anyway, that you go to an auction house and there'd be a dusty old suitcase that everyone was ignoring. You'd buy it, of course, take it home, and it was it was a World War I veteran who had a lot of good taste and had somehow bought Picasso's, no one else had ever noticed. And of course, not only did he buy them, but he also just happened to have all the letters and the photographs to authenticate them. The idea of discovery, finding something out of nowhere, is a curatorial fantasy. Where do you get the works that you're chasing? One of the pleasures of working in a portrait gallery is that you can indulge those kind of fantasies. I don't think I make the works myself and slip them into the collection like Banksy. What you can do, and what we do is actually commission works. So I'm giving you an example on screen of a work this is unfinished, by the way, that is commissioned, so that the room that you'll enter when you come to the new fangled portrait gallery in its new building, when it opens on the 3rd of December, is a whole room full of commissions. Some are quite traditional, like this one by Jude Ray of scientist Frank Fenner, and others are a little bit more out there. This one, to give you an example, is Katrina Hicks, Sydney-based photographer, who I think is very, very stylish and it's of Lane Beachley, the 8 times surf champion, world surf champion, not just Australia. A fabulous portrait. We've got a number of others on the cooker that I can tell you about that some haven't even been made, but they're gorgeous. So we thought we got some money in to create a portrait of Kate Blanchett, and thought, well, how do you do her? Do we do a photograph like this? That would be nice, but I think we could do better. So we thought she's someone who's known on celluloid. That would be the way to do it. So we've gone for a new media artist to. This is a bit like matchmaking, really, isn't it? So we've got David Rosetsky to create a portrait of Kate Blanchett, for example. And there's a number of others. Sorry to sounds like I'm patronising you, pointing out Queensland connections, but there are lots of them. We're getting Scott Redford to do Casey Stoner, for example. I've seen the proofs of that, and they're fantastic, I have to say. It'll be really, really nice. Getting beyond the collection, starting with animated, where's this leading you? I told you I started off with Bruce Petty. Back to Bruce Petty. So for those of you who weren't around in 1968 when Bruce Petty was at his peak and won his Oscar, here's an example of his work. He's a political cartoonist for the Australian, done a lot of things, made a lot of films. In fact, when he refused to join our show, he was in fact making his latest film. So he had a good excuse. So I did go back to him and say, look, I'd really like a self-portrait by you, animated. His first job was as an animator, so I felt quite happy to approach him. This is just a cartoon that he made some time ago. I was going to show you the actual animation before anybody else in Australia, but I won't because it shouldn't be playing around with. This is the spot where it was going to go. But I won't. What I'll do is tell you that it is gorgeous, it's fabulous, it's amusing, it's clever. What you can do with animations beyond the static portrait is that you can have sound, you can have a whole temporal approach. It changes the nature of portraiture immensely. So what Bruce Petty has done has created, he's given me an autobiography. He's given me a picture of himself right at the end, but he's given me a whole autobiography as well, from his very first job doing the safety wombat for Melbourne Council to a number of other things. His revelation during the Vietnam War about politics. All of these are spelled out pictorially. It's a really very charming and wonderful thing to see. In turn, that has inspired something else, namely a show that, again, I can't tell you about. It's terrible when I'm supposed to be visual and I'm showing you a blank screen. The collaboration that we are doing with the ABC, namely that if you can commission things and if you can get filmmakers and new media artists to do stuff, why just stop with the odd commission thing? So we're working with the ABC, and they're the ones who are telling me not to tell you, by the way. What we did was launch an appeal to all of Australia to write in and say who's your favourite Australian, which people have done, and then in turn we matched those favourite Australians with our favourite Australian new media artists. So it's again that matchmaking thing. So we've got 15 new media artists, 30 favourite Australians, and we're producing an exhibition that will be on the floor when we open on the 3rd of December. I'm not supposed to tell you who they are because the ABC will get cranky. Also, the works aren't done, so I can't sneak you any pictures either. I can say that I was pleased that Peter Cundall was in there at number 6, because he's my favourite Australian. You're only allowed to vote once, unfortunately, otherwise he would have been higher. But that's the way it goes. What I really wanted to end with was, in part the Bruce Petty animation cranking over, because that way you remember it rather than my face. But what I wanted to say that all of these projects, in a sense, aren't really using the collection, and this is supposed to be creative uses of the collection. In part, I started off by telling you this because that's what I'm doing at the moment, but I thought there were other alternatives, and in a sense, Robert has mentioned other alternatives. There are the obvious other ones. Fred Wilson, for example, I think is a very interesting person who made a number of interventions into the collection. He was the guy, black American artist who put slave manacles into a collection of Georgian silver from the colonial period, so you then reread it in a very different way Zoe Leonard put photographs of vaginas into a collection of portraits of Renaissance gentlemen. Again, you reread things differently through that kind of intervention. What I'm suggesting that, although I'm not using the collection per se, that these kind of projects, the Animate itself and others, while they don't use the collection, are interventions into the exhibition schedule, interventions into the idea of the collection as much as anything else. They are in fact mirrors of the collection in different ways, and what they do this kind of exhibitions is transcend policy for a start, which I started off by telling you for a reason, namely this reason, are very, very restricted. How do you escape the manacles of the collection policy? You do it by going beyond the collection. Equally, I showed you the Mona Lisa budget. How do you transcend budget? This is you can do certain things by going beyond the collection. You don't have to own it to show it, to reflect on your own collection. I think by moving beyond it, I think is very, very interesting. The other thing is, of course, is that your attitude to other works. Because the portrait gallery is so tight in what it does, I feel that all of those portraits out there, not the ones in the collection, but everything, has an affinity with our collection. So there's a sort of a family attitude. So in a sense, for me, those other works out there are part of a dispersed collection, which is an interesting way of thinking about things. So that idea of intervention or dispersed collection, I think, fit in here quite nicely. The other thing is, of course, with borrowing things in, you get to trial the works. Do they fit in? Do they look good? Do you like them? It's also a very handy thing. You can place these works in context, which is good. Basically, I'm saying that you can refresh the collection by going beyond it, and equally you can refresh your audiences by going beyond the collection. So, thank you very much. You've gone beyond passion. Oh, one last thing. The shameless plug, well, not really shameless, this is not mine, that we had an online exhibition, but we also wanted to cater for those who who aren't computer literate, if you like. So we did produce the exhibition on disc and handed it out on our magazine to everybody. So those of you, those people who are not particularly connected or had a slow connection were able to see the exhibition. Thank you.